Hello, everyone. Welcome to NPM, NPX, package JSON, package lock files. Let's figure out how it all fits together. So all of these things are a part of the Node ecosystem. And I am actually going to use Inbox for this. Why don't you head over to Inbox if you'd be so kind. Right. There we go. All right, questions posted there. What is Node? Let's take a couple minutes, give it your best answer. Go! All right, pencils down. Send me what you got. Lauren, would you read your answer? It's very good.
I said that it is a JavaScript runtime environment and allows you to run code outside of the browser.
That's it. It is also part of an ecosystem of tools. So we could look at it like this. It's the runtime. That's what allows us to use this code, even though normally it has to be in a browser. Does anybody remember the particular name of the piece of the browser that was ripped out to make Node? It's a weird trivia thing. It's 2 characters. Fair enough. The V8 engine. That's what Chrome's JavaScript engine is called, V8. Because it's an engine, get it? And so yeah, around, I want to say 2011 or so, a guy named Ryan Dahl rips out the V8 engine from Chrome, because it's open source software, so just went to the Chromium project and yanked it out. And was trying to see if he could make it work standalone. He did. That's one part of the ecosystem. Some other parts of the Node ecosystem are the APIs. So the browser has window and document and fetch and local storage. We call those browser APIs. They're not part of the JavaScript language, but if you're running JavaScript in a browser, you have access to all of those things. There's a similar set of things that we have for Node that are not available in the browser. For example, access to the file system, access to the running process on your computer, a whole bunch of things there. So those APIs are all part of Node. There's a thing called libuv that's in charge of how your processor works with JavaScript. And then lastly, it's this package ecosystem. Called NPM. So NPM just kind of goes along with all of this other Node stuff. It's all part of what is collectively referred to as Node.js. So a slightly broader view of this than we've been using so far. So we're going to dig into this package ecosystem a little bit. So to start with, let's see what happens if I init an npm project, but I don't do the -y. I actually look at the things. Okay, so I go over here, and I'm going to make npm practice 2. All right, nothing up this sleeve, nothing up this sleeve. If I npm init, it's going to walk me through making a JSON file. So it can say, what do I want to call this? By default, that's the thing in parentheses. If I just hit enter, it's going to take that, like that. This is like a good one. I don't know why it defaults to version 1 all the time. Should really probably be more something like that as a default. Description, teaching a class, yo. Entry point is like, what's the main file in this project? All right. How do you run your tests? Jest. Is there a Git repo? Could be. Or nah. Practice, test, throwaway. Don't use. All hallmarks of a good Kyle Coberly repo. Say I want the license to be MIT instead. And so all this process does is put that into a JSON file for you. So I used to have nothing. Now I have that. This is like metadata for the project. And it's heavily focused around this package ecosystem, but there's some other cool stuff that kind of comes along with that also. So I think the coolest part of this are the scripts. Anything that's like a utility script kind of thing, we can put in here. So I'll give you some examples. So for the LMS, some of the scripts that I have. How do do you start the app? How do you build the app? How do you test the app? How do you test it before you deploy it? We'll talk about ejecting. That's a React specific thing. Nobody else uses ejecting. So like that's exact. So if I type npm start, that's exactly like typing npx React script start. It's easier to remember. It's more standardized across different node projects. And things like test, if I do npm test, that's exactly like typing npx and then this entire thing. I don't know. I don't want to type that whole fucking command out every single time I want to run my test. I just want to say npm test. So that lets us like abstract all of that kind of stuff out. And the stuff that you do in there doesn't even need to be specific to like node stuff. Like I could have a script that was like, come on, list, and it just runs ls. So if I do npm run ls, or sorry, npm run list, because I can't remember the ls command. It's an abbreviation. Fuck that. npm run list, and it lists the stuff in there. That's all that's happening in that scripts file. Ask me some questions about it.
That was npm install to get that package JSON?
npm init.
Init, great.
Still just have that one package JSON file. We can use scripts to kind of put like a shortcut around commands. Makes them easy to remember. And when a partner forks and clones this repo, they don't need to know exactly all the syntax for all of our scripts. They can just look in here and go, oh, that's how I run the tests. I don't know if you're using Jest. I don't know if you're using Mocha. I don't know if you're using Karma. I don't care. It's npm test on everything. If it changes down the road, my script name doesn't need to change. More questions about this?
So to access the LS, you did the npm run list.
Correct.
How come whenever you do an npm test, you don't have to do npm run test?
Great question. There are two keywords that don't need the word run in them. One of them is start, which is usually something like that. The other one is test. Everything else needs the word run in front of it. Why just those two? I don't know. Ask Ryan Dahl. I didn't make it. But npm start does not need the word run in front of it. npm test does not need the word run in front of it. That list one, that doesn't. Oh, look, and that's why. Like, there's already a command for npm called list. So if I wanted to run my one, I have to put run in front of it. There's an alternative package manager that a lot of people like called Yarn, where you don't need to use the word run for anything. If there's a matching thing in that script file, it just runs it. So that's and like that was one of the things that people liked about Yarn. What that means is that having those two things be different than every other script was an unpopular design decision. I wouldn't be surprised if they change it down the road. Yep, npm start, npm test, everything else is npm run, name of the script. Now, kind of a cool thing, if I make an index.js file so that error goes away. So npm start will run that command. npm run start does the same thing. So you can optionally use run with everything. Most people don't, though. Other questions so far? Cool. So what a package.json file is mostly used for is keeping track of dependencies. So like, I want to use jest here. All right, well, I don't have jest installed. If I npm install jest, a couple things happen. One, it adds jest to my package.json. Like so. My semver symbols are not great. That's what this thing is. I believe what that says is at least 28.1.0, but anything that has a higher number here or here, we want to use that also. But if like version 29 comes out, don't use that. It needs to be a version 28, but it could be version 28.2, version 28.50, version 28.1.1. That's what that symbol means, I think. There's a couple of them. I think that one is keep the major version the same, do a higher minor or patch version if you can. One of the other things that it did was it made this lock file. The idea of a lock file is that if this is the rules for how recent a version of jest it should use, the lock file has the exact version of it should use. So like that's the rule. What it actually got, see if I can find it. Oh shoot, I did that wrong. Node modules. There we go. What it actually got was 28.1.0. But it could have gotten one of those higher minor or patch versions. Didn't though. That's telling you exactly what version it got. So the reason that they started adding these lock files, they did this, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, was that if I install this, I get 28.1.0. And then just comes out with 28.1.2. And then you fork and clone my project, and then you npm install. And it goes, oh, these are the rules. So you install and you get 28.1.2, but I still have this one. And then we get a weird bug. Works on my machine, doesn't work on Matt P's machine. That's because we're actually using different versions of a dependency that both satisfy the same rule. So a lock file is, this is the rule for how this should be resolved. This is the actual version that should be downloaded anytime somebody actually wants that. And it has the exact versions of every one of their dependencies also. So this makes it more predictable, more safe. If Matt P clones my project and installs, he gets the exact same versions of all of these libraries that I do. A package lock is a generated file. So what that means is if I delete it, like so, if I npm install again, pew, it makes a new one for me. Now, that's kind of like a last resort. That's going to rerun, like redo all those versions, all that kind of stuff. But since it saves that in a file, anybody else would use the same versions, like once they got your lock file. So you typically commit that. That's part of the repo. That's not ignored. That's not generated every time. Then there'd kind of be no point. But yeah, that's how lock files work.
When you deleted it and then just recreated it, did it overwrite all those custom implementations you put into the package.json?
No, it doesn't touch the package JSON. It looks at these rules and goes, all right, so I need something that's at least 28.1. What is the newest version that satisfies that? And so if a new version came out from when I installed this, 2 minutes ago, it'll put that in the lock file instead.
I see. Okay.
But it didn't change anything on this file.
You did that a significant amount of time later, say 6 months later down the road, and there was an update. Could it mess up your testing file?
Potentially, but you would know right away. So let's say one of those updates, I don't know, got rid of something that my tests use. The good thing is that I would go, okay, cool, no problem. So I run my npm test, and then my thing blows up, and I know that right away, and anybody else who has that lock file would see the same thing. So that gives us the opportunity to go, all right, hang on. We need to maybe be more choosy about which version that we're using. So I could rewrite my package JSON to be like, no. I don't want anything that's better than this. I want exactly that.
Could you write that package number down in your README so that you could find out which one you were using to begin with, or
no?
Will it be
What
saved?
you could do is you could look back through your Git history and see which versions were in the lock file.
Okay.
But yeah, I probably wouldn't put that in the README. I would I would check something like version control for that. But part of the way these versions work, so this one, the first number, is a breaking change, potentially breaking change. It's called a major version. You generally need to be careful when incrementing those. So if version 29 comes out, there's no guarantee that that works with the test that I already have. This next number is called a minor version. And that means adding something, but not taking anything out. So if just adds new features, they increment the minor version. They don't increment the major version, though. And that shouldn't break any of my stuff, because adding a new feature didn't, I'm not using the new feature, so why would that break any of my stuff? Now, in practice, every once in a while that happens, but it's not supposed to. And this one's called a patch version, which is for whoopsies. That is, hey, we added this feature. Ah, shit, there was a bug in that. Hang on. And so you increment it. And you go, oh, damn it, that's not how that was actually supposed to work. This is like all the stuff that you guys send in to the this seems broken. Those are patches. So every time I see one of those, yup. So you're indicating that it's a new version of the thing, but no features have been added, no features have been removed. It's just supposed to be more stable. You're supposed to be fixing things or potentially improving performance on things, but not adding or removing any features. And so in general, like that symbol, pretty good default. You want to use version 28, and as high a number as you can find on these. That's going to like give you the most stability, the most features, and least risk of, not least, a reasonably low risk that something breaks. More questions so far?
So if you see something is version like 1.1.80, is that typically a bad sign? Unreliable or?
Not necessarily. Some things are like they just don't do a great job updating the versions. Things that are below major version 0, these kind of like have a little bit less meaning. Everything can be a breaking change below version 0. But like that doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't work. It's just that it's not very stable. So for example, Node didn't hit a 1.0 release for like years. Hold on, let's look up the version history. And there's actually a really fascinating piece of history in Node that I won't get too far into. Okay. I didn't see that one coming. Node version history. Cool. So it wasn't until... Okay, so our first release was in 2013. It was midway through 2015 before they got something over a 0 point release. And you might notice that it went from 0.10 to 0.12 to 4 point something. 4.2 was the first release on that. There's actually a fascinating story behind all that. That was like history I lived through. But I thought for sure Node was just going to be dead. Because what happened was these huge open source projects, they have stewards that are in charge of like accepting the pull requests and determining the direction for the platform and all this kind of stuff. So these first two releases, 0.10 and 0.12, these were managed by a company called Joyent. They're like, I think they're just a consultancy. I think they just sell Node.js consulting. And so, but it's a small shop, and they were in charge of like taking in these pull requests and stuff. They did a terrible job. People fucking hated Joyent. And they were slow. They sat on like really good ideas for way too long. It's open source, so people forked it. They went, all right, I'm done with Joyent. And they created a project called IO.js. And they're like, no, it's just Node, but we're actually going to do all the shit that Joyent wouldn't do. Actually, I got the timeline on that wrong. That happened after 10, and that was like the scariest part of it. So that became IO.js, and then Joyent made version 12. And so they started developing in different directions. And what tends to happen in tech when that happens is there's just not enough support for two versions of this, and so both of them die. So I thought that was going to be the end of Node. And then a Christmas miracle happened. Joyent did like a King David thing, or King Solomon. It was like, I guess it would be the opposite of that. They didn't cut the baby in half. I guess they were the mom in the King Solomon story. They're like, all right, we give up. We quit. We don't need to be in charge of Node anymore. And then the IO.js people were like, awesome. Well, we never wanted to have this separate version of Node to begin with. And so they worked on recombining these two different paths that they'd taken. and ended up at 4.2. And ever since then, it has been managed by the Node Foundation, which has done a much, much better job. And Joyent's a member of the Node Foundation, and so is Microsoft and Google and lots of other companies there. But yeah. So the 0 point stuff is usually not guaranteed to be stable, but like, yo, there was production apps using 0.10 and 0.12. It's different on different projects. Kind of got to use your judgment. Probably the most sure way to see whether or not like a particular NPM library is something you should use is look at the downloads. So like if I want spreadsheet to database. All right, its last published was 3 years ago. That's not good. Last published was 5 years ago. What about this? 14 weekly downloads. Not so good. Why, that's probably as bad as this asshole's thing that does the same thing. Look, I got 61. That was a library that I wrote. It uses Google Sheets like a database. Yeah, 61 times a week somebody downloads that. God knows why, because my last publish on it was 4 years ago. And so, like, those are things, like, anybody can publish anything. Versus this, 95,000 downloads a week, that's probably going to be more reliable. Published sometime in the last year, like, that's probably more reliable. Those are some good, like, mental checks on, like, how confident you should feel about a library. Look at Lodash, most popular library on NPM. 40 million downloads a week. More questions? Cool. Let's talk about NPX. NPX is also kind of new, like last couple years. And I love it. Oh my God, it's made my life so much better, especially as a teacher. There's so much stuff that we've done with NPX that was a lot more complicated not very long ago. So NPX, it's actually really simple what it does. When you type NPX and then a command, what it does is it looks in your node modules folder. There's this hidden folder called bin, and it just runs whatever script is in here. So if I do npx rimraf, it runs that script. If I do npm or npx jest, it runs that script. Which is just JavaScript. But when you npm install jest, it throws this file in the .bin folder. And when you do npx jest, it runs that file. That's it. And what it's meant for is for things that you're not going to like require into a node project. You don't want the modules from it. You want the command that it gives you. So like, for example, rimraf is a command to recursively delete things. It does rmrf, basically. So things like light server, things like jest, things like TypeScript, TSC. All of those are like programs that we want to run. npx gives us a way easier way to do that than what we had to do before. It also makes it so that we don't need to globally install anything anymore. Like you've probably seen all kinds of things that are like npm i-g at Angular CLI or whatever. That's called a global install. You don't need to do that shit with npx anymore. npx, whether or not it's already installed, you can just do like npx Angular CLI and then start running your like Angular CLI commands. Done. If it's not installed, it'll install it for you. If it is installed, it'll use your installed version. The amount of my life I've lost troubleshooting people's globally installed light server things that are all totally broken, or Parcel or whatever, and be able to go, whether or not you've already installed it, just npx Parcel and call it a day. That's so much nicer.
Do y'all work well with each other, or do you have to be careful in different ones that you put on there for a certain project?
No, I wouldn't say you have to be especially careful.
What if you accidentally put one in on a project and you need to take it out?
So in that case, you would go, like, let's say I npm install Parcel. And so that's adding it to my package.json file. It's adding it to my package lock file. It's throwing all of the files it's downloading into the node modules folder, doing all that kind of stuff. Oh, I changed something on for Jest, and now it's mad at me. Hang on. No, which version of Node am I using? Come on, man. All right, let's try that again. All right, let's say Jest is acting up. If I do that,
28
was
okay. It was the 28.1.0 to begin with.
Oh, okay, cool. Let's say I got it wrong. I can't remember what it was. That uninstalls it effectively. Like if I run npm I on that, removed 272 packages. Now that's the only stuff that's in node modules. No dependencies. I reinstall it. Back in business. I want to npm install Parcel. And any day now. So that installs Parcel to my dependencies, adds it to the lock file, adds it to the node modules folder, all of that kind of stuff. I'm no longer using Parcel. Delete it out of your package.json, rerun npm install. It'll yank out everything that you're not using anymore. Questions about npx? Quick note on that. If I want to use Parcel on the command line, I can just npx Parcel now because I've installed it to the project. But inside of one of those scripts, if I want to serve command or something. I don't actually have to put the npx on it. I can just say parcel. Figures it out. It doesn't hurt anything to say npx parcel, but it's not actually needed. All right, questions about any of that? All right. Now, last thing we're going to do. Let's work on that cheat sheet Lauren was talking about earlier. Let's figure out all the steps that we would need to do to get TypeScript and testing and parcel and all that stuff working together. So pull yourself up an empty folder on the command line and let's dig in. All right, empty folder, nothing up this sleeve, nothing up this sleeve. Step one. Let's make an index.html and an index.ts, like so. In your index.js file, scaffold something out, get it all linked up. Come on, dude. Friday for everyone. All right. Next thing that I see people screw up a lot on this. In your script tag, two things need to be true. One, well, a couple things. We need to defer it. The source needs to be the TypeScript file, not the JavaScript file. And we want to say that it's a module. I'll pause for a sec. Get that far. We've made an index.ts, we've made an index.html, and our index.html, we linked to a TypeScript file, we called it a module, we deferred the load. All right, next step. Let's throw all that in a source directory so we can split out our source code from our compiled code. So we can make a source directory, move everything into it. So now the app looks like that. Cool. Next step. TypeScript. We can't work with TypeScript. This is the web. So we're going to npm init, make one of those package JSON files I've been hearing so much about. And I'm going to install a few things. I'm going to install Parcel. I'm going to install TypeScript. I'm going to install Jest. And I'm going to install Jest's types. I think that's everything I need. Parcel is going to be the server. TypeScript is TypeScript. Jest, testing framework. It has like describe and context and it and test. TypeScript doesn't know what those are. So we need to import the types too. All right, fire that off. I'll pause there for a sec, give you a chance to get caught up. Give me a thumbs up if you're ready to go. Sarah, Amp, Kurt, Lauren.
I'm just typing this into a Word document because my computer's too slow to keep up with you. So
All right.
it's not even opening VS Code.
Nice. I see Scott. I see Blair. Not Parnell. Yes, Matt.
Yeah, my
C.
computer is slow. It's taking forever.
It's all good. We can wait a sec.
So mine has it downloaded 174 packages, but it says there were 2 vulnerabilities found. I don't know.
That's normal.
Okay.
That's also a relatively new feature in NPM. If any of those has a security vulnerability in it, it lets you know. A lot of time you can do Npm Audit Fix, and it'll automatically like update your versions. Sometimes it can't do that. Like it won't do that if it would have to update a major version because it thinks that might break your code. But if somebody has patched that, they'll just put the patch in.
How come different people get different results with that? I mean, shouldn't we be downloading the same stuff? Like mine says I added 449 packages and I had 0 vulnerabilities.
So that is because we have different computers. I'm on Linux, you're on Windows. And so it takes that into account when it's downloading stuff. Also, my version of Node is 18. If you installed at the beginning of class, you probably installed 17 something or other. And so one of the things that NPM does is it goes, oh, cool, this is Windows and Node version 17.4.1. That means I need to get these versions of these packages because those are the ones that are compatible with that. NPM handles all that shit for you. But that's one of the reasons that we all get different results from this. And those like security vulnerabilities, like they look scary. You're not like about to get hacked. That's not entirely what that means. Especially the ones that are like low severity or even medium severity. Those are like not a big deal. All right, onward. So I install these things. I also want to initialize TypeScript. Parcel will work without this. Things start getting a little bit weird, though, especially when we start trying to do jest and stuff. So to do this, we're going to npx tsc --init. Notice that we didn't have to do a ---- when we npm initted, and you do have to ---- when you tsc init. They're made by completely different people who had different ideas about whether or not that's a command or a flag. The programming is a messier sport than people make it out to be. Otherwise, it works a lot like npm init does. It makes a JSON file. It puts these defaults in. Those defaults are okay for us. Oh, I forgot one npm install. Npm install ts-jest. Because Parcel does our like TypeScript transpilation for us. We don't want it to do the jest stuff. It can't really. So we want a version of jest that handles all of that for us. You could have put that at the end of this list and been just fine.
Does it matter what order you do these in? I'm guessing not, since you did them all at the same time.
Nope.
Okay.
ts-jest also has an initialization command. I always forget what it is, so I look it up every time. There we go. npx ts-jest config : init. Like that. That, wait for it, creates a configuration file. From an order standpoint, you cannot npx tsc until TypeScript is installed. You cannot npx ts-jest until ts-jest is installed. Otherwise, I don't think the orders actually mattered on anything we've done so far. You could do all of this before you make the HTML and TypeScript files. That doesn't actually matter that much. Cool. So we've configured TypeScript, we've configured jest. All these things should have what they need. One more file that we should make. I'm gonna say, let's hop into this source directory with index.html and the index.ts. Let's also make some module.ts. and some module.test.ts. So now that folder looks like this. Cool.
Hey, I have kind of an unrelated question. Well, it's related. So like going forward, we're really not going to be making JavaScript files anymore. We're going to like default to TypeScript, right?
Oh, it's even wilder than that. In Angular, you're not going to make the files at all. Angular makes the files for you. But yeah, they're all TypeScript files. All right. All right, so that's what we got so far. Now, last couple things we need. We need to set up our scripts. So we're going to open up package.json. Our test script, just. Let's add a start script that'll have our parcel command. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to call this serve. And that's going to be parcel source slash slash star.html. So if I want to start putting folders and stuff inside of my source directory to organize stuff, that's with those 2 stars. It'll look through all of your folders and stuff too. And then I'm going to make a build command that does almost the exact same thing. It has the word build in it. And one last thing, get rid of that main key.
Sorry, I missed what you did.
I deleted that.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
So yeah, it's a part of the auto generation from npm init, and we don't want it. Causes trouble. Next thing. We're not in a Git repo yet. So let's initialize a Git repo. And while we're at it, we've got some things that we probably want to git ignore. Most importantly, we want to make a git ignore file that ignores the node modules folder and the dist folder. We don't want to put either of those in version control. Also, I think there's like a parcel cache folder that it makes. No, we haven't run parcel yet, so we'll see in a sec. But at least those 2 things we want in our git ignore. That makes, surprisingly, git ignore them. Doesn't try to track them, doesn't keep track of versions, doesn't put them on GitHub. Somebody else forks and clone them. They don't have the thing that you have.
Do you do this in your main folder or the source folder?
Great question. You can, we want to do this in the main folder because that's where the node modules and the dist folder will be. You can put git ignores anywhere though. But the problem is it'll only look at that folder and down.
Could you go back to the package file real quick?
Love to.
Thank you.
All right, time to see if it works. If I run npm run serve, sick! Localhost 1, 2, 3, 4, baby. That's what we want. And now I'm curious, did it make that cache file? .parcel-cache. I guess we want to put that in our git config too. .parcel-cache. like that. Yep. All right, so serving works. How about building? npm run build. Cool. Looks all right so far. Now, for testing to work, we have to have at least one test in the test file. So can I put some test in here? So if I do that, do it work? npm test. It works. Now, moment of truth. This is the thing that was screwing everybody up. Can I have something over here that's like my app? And I have like an empty paragraph tag there. And then in my index TS, in my submodule TS, I make a function called like get message. And it logs hello world, or not logs, I want it to return. Come on. Okay, so I want it to return that string. I want it to export this function. So that's in submodule TS. In index TS, I want to import that. Like so. And then I want to grab that paragraph tag. And I want to set its text content to get message. Why is it so mad at me? Oh. Oh, I thought it might be able to. Too clever. Oop, not const. Come on, man. What am I, new? That's not how we write modules. There we go. Okay, so I've got this TypeScript code here. It's being scripted into the HTML thing there. I've got the DOM code split out from the code that doesn't do anything with the DOM. This code doesn't do anything with the DOM, which means I should be able to test that. I should be able to import the exact same way. I should be able to assert that get message returns hello world. So I expect get message to be hello world. Okay, so if I did this right, I should be able to serve this up and see hello world, which came from a module that I wrote via a TypeScript file. I should also be able to run this test of my non-DOM code. And I used ECMAScript modules the whole way. npm test, do we work? Close. Doesn't have an exclamation point. Lets me know that the test is working. I like it. All right, I have a passing test. Do I have a passing serve? Localhost 1234. Localhost 1234. Hello world! And some fucking exclamation point.
That where it would
bad.
tell you that your TypeScript code wasn't correct in the browser?
Oh yeah, it could. So like if I do something like this and I did like maybe I didn't check to see if that was null. It might not actually do the compilation, maybe. Let's see. No, I think this just YOLO'd it. Let me get an actual error. Let's see, p.text content plus equals 1. All right, let's try that. Nope, it coerced it.
How do you see your TypeScript errors?
In your text editor.
Okay.
So yeah, if I do this, your text editor will tell you like what your TypeScript errors are. And I think in VS Code, I don't even think you need to install a plugin for that, because VS Code uses TypeScript under the hood for JavaScript anyway, and so I'm pretty sure you just get all your TypeScript errors for free. She works. Questions?
Could I see your HTML file real
Love
quick
to.
again?
Easiest
Thank
things
you.
to mess up on this, not trying to link to the JavaScript file instead of the TypeScript file, not letting it know that it's using modules. Awesome. I hope that helps.